All right, let's talk about something that feels like it's straight out of science fiction. We're diving into a research paper that introduces an AI model called TribeV2. And what it does is pretty incredible. It aims to predict human brain activity. Yeah, you heard that right. We're talking about building a single digital model of how our entire brain works.
You know, for decades, neuroscience has had this fundamental challenge. Think of it like this. We have these amazingly detailed maps of the brain's cities, the specific regions that handle specific jobs. We know exactly where you process faces or where you see motion. But what we've been missing is the map of the entire country, a single, unified model that shows how all these different cities are connected and how they work together to create, well, us.
And this old way of doing things is what the paper calls the divide and conquer approach. And don't get me wrong, it's been unbelievably successful. It's given us really deep insights. We've learned that one area, V5, is all about motion, and another, the fusiform gyrus, is for recognizing faces. But the result is this kind of fragmented picture. How do all these specialized parts talk to each other? How do they integrate everything? That has been the billion-dollar question.
And that brings us to the solution this paper puts forward, a foundation model for the brain. It's called TribeV2. And the whole idea is to use the massive power of modern AI to finally build that unified map.
So how in the world do you train a model like this? Well, take a look. Over on the left, you see the input, just a massive amount of data from people watching movies and listening to stories, all while they're inside an fMRI scanner. All that rich, multimedia data then gets fed into the TribeV2 model, right there in the middle. And the model's only job is to learn the patterns and predict what the brain activity should look like. And on the right, that's the result. The model's prediction is just stunningly similar to the real measured brain activity.
The secret sauce here is something called tri-modal learning. And it's simpler than it sounds. The model isn't just looking at video or just listening to audio. It's processing all three streams of information, video, audio, and the text from transcripts, all at the same time. This is what lets it learn how the brain actually integrates our senses, which creates a way more powerful and accurate model of how we think.
And the scale of this whole project is just immense. The model was trained on a dataset of 1,117 hours of fMRI scans. That's data from 720 different people. So we're not talking about some small lab experiment here. This is a massive, massive undertaking, which is exactly what you need if you're going to try to build a model of the human brain itself.
So, the big question, right? Does it actually work? I mean, is this new AI approach really any better than what we had before? Let's take a look at the proof.
And this chart really tells the whole story. It's comparing the old gold standard methods, those are the simpler models up top, with TribeV2 down at the bottom. And across 4 completely different data sets, it's not even a contest. TribeV2 just consistently and significantly blows the traditional models out of the water. It's a huge testament to the power of its deep learning architecture.
But here's the ultimate test. It's one thing to predict brain activity for someone the model has already seen data from, but can it generalize? Can it predict the brain activity for a brand new person, someone it has never, ever encountered before? This is what's called zero-shot generalization.
Okay, the results here are just stunning. So on these charts, every little gray dot shows how well one person's brain scan predicts the group average. Now look at the green line. That's TribeV2's prediction. You'll notice that the green line is consistently higher than almost all of the gray dots. So what does that mean? It means the model's prediction is actually better at guessing the average human response than most individual brains are. Let that sink in for a second. The AI simulation of a brain is a more reliable model of a typical brain than an actual individual human brain is. Wow.
And this unbelievable ability to generalize unlocks what is, for me, the most exciting part of this whole research paper: the ability to run experiments on a virtual brain.
This is the key phrase from the paper: in-silico experimentation. In-silico just means it's done on a computer, through a simulation. So, TribeV2 basically becomes a digital laboratory. It's like a flight simulator for the brain, where scientists can test their ideas virtually.
Let's see this in action. The researchers took classic neuroscience experiments and ran them on the model. What you're looking at here are the model's predicted brain maps when it's shown things like faces or places. And then they compared those predictions to the actual measured maps from decades of human studies, and the match is just incredible. The model, without being told anything, rediscovered famous brain areas like the fusiform face area for faces and the parahippocampal place area for places. And it's not just for vision. They did the exact same thing for language.
And again, the predicted maps on top look almost identical to the measured maps on the bottom. The model was able to replicate these really complex findings, like figuring out which brain networks can tell the difference between speech and other sounds, or complex sentences from just a list of words. It basically taught itself the functional organization of the brain's language network from scratch.
So the takeaway here is absolutely massive. This could revolutionize how neuroscience gets done. Instead of spending months, maybe even years, and a ton of money to run a big fMRI study, a researcher can now run a quick pilot experiment on Tribe V2 first. They can test ideas super fast and sharpen their experiments before ever putting a single person in a scanner.
All of this really points toward what the paper calls a new, unified framework for brain science, moving away from all these separate fragmented studies and toward integrated predictive models that see the whole picture.
This last visualization gives us such an incredible peek into how our brain combines our senses. It's a map where red shows areas best predicted by text, green is for audio, and blue is for video. And all those mixed colors, that's where the brain is integrating that information. See that yellow patch in the superior temporal lobe? That's where audio and text representations literally merge together. It's just a beautiful, unprecedented look at how our brain does multisensory integration across the entire cortex.
Now, of course, the model isn't perfect, and the researchers are really clear about its limitations. It's held back by the resolution of fMRI itself, it models the brain as just a passive observer instead of an active agent, and it's missing senses like touch and smell. But you know what? These limitations are also the roadmap for the future, showing us how to improve the model and maybe even use it one day to study clinical conditions.
And all this leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. We now have what the researchers call a robust digital model of the human brain. So if we can truly simulate brain activity this accurately and just keep getting better at it, what are the next great mysteries we might finally solve? What could a tool like this tell us about creativity, or consciousness, or even the origins of mental illness? The possibilities are truly staggering to think about.